What's up, world? This is your man, MrSan44Man. We got a travesty going on in America today. Children have been killed by the multiple numbers. And if you're out there and you live out there in Connecticut, you need to be over there at the Shady Hook School to check it out. And if you know anybody out there at the Shady Hook School out there in Connecticut, behind me you're going to see the footages of the reports. Multiple children have been killed. If you know anybody out there in Connecticut that have kids out there at the Shady Hook School, MrSan44Man saying right now, get on the phone and let them know. Get to that school.
Right. I think you want to be honest, but
we wonder if you're going to know what to do in an emergency, and those teachers excelled today.
Oh, that is good to hear that those teachers were doing that. What was that like when you entered the firehouse? Were you worried about your son?
Very worried, because at that point we just didn't understand the enormity of what had happened, and so you don't know. Are you walking into a situation where you're going to see your child, or are you going to be told that your child is hurt? So I actually met my husband on the way as we were running down, and you just run in, and I'm just scanning this very crowded room, and I spotted his teacher, and then I saw that little face looking up at me, and it was the best thing a mom can see.
answer their questions, but you don't want to go on and on about it. It can be hard because when we're anxious, right, a very common thing to do is to look at a lot of media coverage, to keep looking at the facts as though that will help you get control over the situation, when in fact it tends to stir anxiety.
My name is Ryan Land.
Politicians seem to think.
Hi, I'm Todd, and it's after the show. You know.
Put it so well, this is a parent's worst nightmare.
This is MrSan44Man. Tragedy didn't happen at the Shady Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. If you know any people out there, they need to get their kids. They need to get to their kids. If they don't know, let them know. There's been a big shooting, Shady Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. A lot of children have been killed. It's a very sad day in America for us. We've lost a lot of children just today. Here's a story.
Well, what's going on now is they're doing background investigations into the shooter, but they're also going to locations associated with the shooter, not just directly associated with Ryan Lanza, his residence, and they're looking for a location in New Jersey there, but also his family's residences in and around Connecticut. He has a father who is down in Stamford. He has a mother who is the teacher at the school, whose house is in Newtown. They went there. That's where they saw what appeared to be a body, and they're doing an entry there to see what else they can learn inside that house. And of course, they're spinning all the records and databases to get additional background. That will give them information, but it won't give them the why. The only way they're going to get the why is to get into his notes, get into his computers, get into his friends, see what was going on in his world and what he was saying about it.
All right, John Miller, stand by. I want to go to Bob Orr, who's been reporting some new information about the guns that were involved, at least two.
Yes. Back up 1 second on that. In addition, the AP is reporting that police have Ryan Lanza's brother in custody, and this is... we wouldn't make too much of that. In a case like this, you would take that person into custody and start those interviews. The question is, where did they pick him up? And is there any involvement in this beyond the fact that he's his brother and they're going to want information from him? But as you know, we've heard echoes throughout the day of a second person being in custody, and that may be just to elicit information from his brother. There may be more to it. Too early to tell. I'm sorry. Go to Bob.
No, thank you for sharing those details that the Associated Press is now reporting his brother is in custody. A detail in this continuing investigation. I want to show everybody now live the White House press briefing room, the Brady briefing room, where the president is expected to appear at 3:15 and will address the nation in what is this school shooting, this massacre in Newtown, Connecticut, the second deadliest school shooting in American history. We will then hear from the governor of Connecticut. Let's go now to Bob Orr, who has been speaking with law enforcement.
That's right, and it appears from what we've been told that everyone who was in that classroom was killed. That appears that that's where Ryan Lanza, the man that authorities tell us was responsible for this shooting, focused the majority of his efforts here after entering the school, firing shots at the principal's office, then going to this classroom and shooting round after round after round. Witnesses described hearing as many as 100 shots, so a huge number of rounds fired by the gunman who went into this school this morning. His brother was taken into custody at the scene. And it's still not clear to investigators whether his brother was there because he was aware there was a problem with this young man and knew he was going to the school, whether it was just coincidence, whether he had some knowledge. That's what investigators are trying to sort out right now. He's being questioned, and we don't know what the results of that yet are. I think it's fair to say that he's still in custody, but not being called a suspect, just someone who is in custody. They hope to learn more information from him. This gunman went to the school with 4 firearms in all, but only carried 2 of them. But obviously that was enough to do enormous amounts of damage. 2 handguns, 2 of the most commonly available handguns in America. 9mm made by Glock and Sig Sauer. These are extremely common. They're carried by one or the other, virtually every person in law enforcement in America. They're widely available. They're, of course, legal weapons. Connecticut is a registration state, so presumably Connecticut authorities are tracing the guns to see where they were acquired. And then at the same time, law enforcement authorities are searching every address associated with Ryan Lanza in Connecticut, which is, of course, how that led to the discovery of the relative who was shot there, and other addresses that were apparently connected to this young man in New Jersey. We don't know precisely what that connection is, but search warrants being actively searched, or rather served, all over the region to try to gather additional information about what the motive may have been, how long this was planned, and whether anyone else was involved.
Pete Williams at full staff, but we expect it to be lowered. It has already been lowered at the Capitol. We saw that take place just a short time ago, as we expect the president to really articulate the feelings that I think all Americans are sharing right now, a sense of outrage and just utter sadness. In fact, there as we speak, the American flag being lowered to half-staff above the White House as we expect the president to appear before the camera. And here is the President of the United States.
This afternoon I spoke with Governor Malloy and FBI Director Mueller. I offered Governor Malloy my condolences on behalf of the nation and made it clear he will have every single resource that he needs to investigate this heinous crime, care for the victims, counsel their families. We've endured too many of these tragedies in the past few years. And each time I learn the news, I react not as a president, but as anybody else would, as a parent. And that was especially true today. I know there's not a parent in America who doesn't feel the same overwhelming grief that I do. The majority of those who died today were children. Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. They had their entire lives ahead of them. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, kids of their own. Among the fallen were also teachers, men and women who devoted their lives to helping our children fulfill their dreams. So our hearts are broken today. For the parents and grandparents, sisters and brothers of these little children, and for the families of the adults who were lost. Our hearts are broken for the parents of the survivors as well. For as blessed as they are to have their children home tonight, they know that their children's innocence has been torn away from them too early, and there are no words that will ease their pain. As a country, we have been through this too many times. Whether it's an elementary school in Newton, or a shopping mall in Oregon, or a temple in Wisconsin, or a movie theater in Aurora, or a street corner in Chicago. These neighborhoods are our neighborhoods, and these children are our children. And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics. This evening, Michelle and I will do what I know every parent in America will do, which is hug our children a little tighter, and we'll tell them that we love them, and we'll remind each other how deeply we love one another. But there are families in Connecticut who cannot do that tonight, and they need all of us right now. In the hard days to come, that community needs us to be at our best as Americans, and I will do everything in my power as president to help. Because while nothing can fill the space of a lost child or loved one, all of us can extend a hand to those in need, to remind them that we are there for them, that we are praying for them, that the love they felt for those they lost endures not just in their memories, but also in ours. May God bless the memory of the victims. And in the words of Scripture, heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds.
President Obama concluding brief remarks, fighting back tears, as so many of us had this day, trying to articulate and reflect the sense of sadness and grief and anger that a lot of us are feeling after that horrible tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut today. 26 people killed, 18 of them children, and we've learned within a short while that many of them kindergartners in a class. The president noting that far too many times have we been down this road, and speaking to the country, not just as a president, but as a father, a role that we've seen commanders-in-chief have to take on a number of occasions, but certainly this president has seen his share of this sort of tragedy. Chuck Todd is at the White House. Chuck,
I say this has been an unusual situation where information is being corrected and revised, and Lester, candidly, that may be one of them. Because we've now heard two different names, either Adam or Ryan Lanza. We were initially told that the person who carried out the shooting was 20 years old. Then we were told it was Ryan Lanza, who's 24. It may be that one thing we've been told by some law enforcement officials is that the person who did the shooting may have been carrying someone else's ID. And that could explain the confusion here, and that's probably one of the reasons why Lieutenant Vance from the Connecticut Police just said that they're still trying to verify that person's identity. My guess is they have a pretty good idea of what the person's identity is now, but they're being very cautious before they formally say it. And in one of these situations, what we do is work our sources, and widely in state and local federal law enforcement officials, we were being told the name Ryan, but I just want to caution that at the end of the day, that may turn out to be wrong, because it may be that whoever did the shooting was carrying someone else's ID. So, frankly, Lester, we're still trying to nail that down.
and we've also confirmed what had previously been reported about the direction of the shooting, and that the police say it occurred in one section of the school, 2 rooms, and this refers back to the kindergarten class that his mother apparently taught into. Is that your assumption as well?
Right, and the police there at that news conference didn't want to say what the ages were, but the president in his statement a moment ago said that the children were ages 5 to 10. So that's, I'm sure, very good information that was relayed to the White House.
All right, Pete Williams is bringing Clint Van Sant, former FBI profiler. What were your thoughts on what you just heard in the news conference here?
Well, obviously the police are still involved in a very thorough investigation, and again, these are a lot of agencies. It's multi-states, multi-jurisdictional. You've got like ATF, for example, that is going to be, as Pete suggested, they're going to be chasing down the weapons, trying to identify the ammunition. The FBI will be conducting out-of-state leads, as well as their evidence response team will be on the scene. They've got apparently a massive crime scene. When you have what we're told, Lester, between at least 50, 75 5 rounds or more that have been fired. You have to imagine, even if this individual had 2 semi-automatic pistols, each with a 15-round magazine, he would have had to have carried multiple magazines and reloaded time and again. This is the same picture we had at Virginia Tech when Cho was shooting and shooting and shooting with those 2 handguns. So we have this terrible repeat of history, and we have this terrible copycat type effect that we see one more time. The question now is, who was the shooter really? You know, are we going to have his true identity? Police may well know that now, but they have to confirm that and make sure. And again, we've got the victim's mother allegedly dead, one of the victims inside the school. So we have this matricide. We have another relative allegedly dead at another location. This is as bad as it gets, Lester. Number one, when we see children and school teachers killed wantonly. Number two, when someone kills their own relatives, and especially their own mother, you just can't imagine some of the dark corners that must be in this guy's mind that led him to carry this out. But again, the children, the parents, the victims that we've lost, and Lester, we're going to even see survivor's guilt. Those lucky parents, those fortunate parents who are able to grab their live child and carry them away for days, for weeks to come. They're going to look in the eyes of that child and realize they could have lost him. That's going to be a special child for years to come, and we hope both the children as well as the parents appreciate that, and our hearts go out for those that have lost so many.
And as the president noted, we've seen so much of this in our country, certainly around the world, but so much of this kind of horrible violence. He spoke to the press, made a statement, quite an emotional statement, a little over a half hour ago. In case you missed it, here's some of what the president...
MrSan44Man, police giving an interview on the situation.
No, everyone's been, and that's part of the process, and that's why it took us so long to get here. That's a very good question. Are there any students that were unaccounted for? We had to ensure that we accounted for every single student in that school, and that includes maybe someone that was absent for the day because of illness and didn't come to school. So that was part of the process that we had to go through, and now we have the identification process, which is even more difficult. And so it's going to be some time before we're able to give you that information. It probably won't be available till sometime tomorrow. Did we identify a weapon? We have seized the weapons. Yes, we have, sir.
What kind of weapon?
We did not. We will not discuss that at this time, sir.
I'm trying to reach parents at this time.
We've been in contact with all the parents. We would not come up here until we've been in contact with all the parents, and we've been communicating with them since they arrived here at the scene. They've been fully informed, and that's why it took so long for us to come up here. Go ahead.
Then what is not?
That's it's a good question. Everyone believes that you know, it's something that first responders do, that law enforcement does. But I can tell you, we provided counseling for the first responders because this was a very tragic, horrific scene that they encountered. It's not something that we want to see. It's not something that we see every day. So that's one thing that we have done, and the colonel has made that perfectly clear, that those people are to be spoken to and receive crisis counseling as required.
Lieutenant, you have to be the face here telling us what's happening, but Newtown is a very quiet, beautiful place, and I'm sure this is something that is not an ordinary thing that you deal with like big cities.
The lieutenant can certainly tell you he's a Newtown officer.
You know, as a target,
Sure.
To see this tragedy of this man, how would you describe it has impacted you personally, not only as a law enforcement officer, as a person, and as a...
As a person, the first thing I thought about was my own children.
Look right in here. Go ahead.
You say your name, please?
Lieutenant George Cinco.
What's your name? What's your name?
Lieutenant George Cinco, S-I-N-K-O.
Can you tell us, as a resident of Newtown, and also as law enforcement, I'm sure you have, this is the worst that you have seen?
This is most definitely the worst thing that we've had experience here in town. Tragic. But right now, we're concerned about the families of the victims. Our officers are professional, and we will deal with this as well. The local hospital, Danbury Hospital, has offered their crisis intervention counselors. They will be available at Reed Intermediate School, which is on Wasserman Way, and they're available right now if need be, and they will be there all weekend.
Is there a place where parents are gathering? I mean, and what's that? Can you describe that?
The parents certainly have gathered at the local firehouse, which is adjacent to the school, and we've done our best to comfort them and try to reassure them that we've done everything we can. But as mentioned, it's a difficult process to confirm the status of an entire elementary school, and we need to be right when we do that. It's healing. We just have to think about the families right now and do everything we can for them. We can't confirm any of that right now. The investigation is ongoing.
How long did it take you to realize that?
Minutes after our officers were there, they realized, you know, what a horrific scene we had there. Not the exact timeline on that. Certainly our officers responded immediately, and as soon as they realized what they had, we obviously asked for all the resources we could get.
We'll come back about just before 6 o'clock, because I know a lot of you are around 6. We'll get back here with one more briefing. Then what we'll do is we'll schedule briefings probably tomorrow. So some of you folks look very tired. I'm sure you want to go get a little rest. So we're going to see if we can give you a schedule of briefings for tomorrow. Okay?
You know, sadly, we all know this isn't the first time our nation has experienced a tragedy like this, although this is one of the worst cases.
It certainly is when you consider the age of the victims. Our BC Only area is live in the Satellite Center. I think, BC, that's what shocks us so deeply.
Yeah, what's happening in Connecticut right now is absolutely heartbreaking. What's sad is that we've been here before. We've seen these images, only different stories in different towns. In just the past 20 years, we have seen numerous school shootings. It's a senseless violence that's taken innocent lives. The images are horrific, and sadly, we've seen it played out before. They are some of the worst school shootings in American history. One of the most memorable and disturbing was in 1999 in Littleton, Colorado. 18-year-old Eric Harris and 17-year-old Dylan Klebold shoot and kill 13 people and injure 24 at Columbine High School before killing themselves. The two students spent months planning the attack. In 2005, terror on an Indian reservation in Red Lake, Minnesota. A teenage boy, armed and dangerous, shoots and kills 2 people at his grandfather's home. The next stop, his high school, where he kills 7.
I just heard the gunshot and they just kept getting closer and closer.
In 2006, a man in Nichols Mine, Pennsylvania, enters a school operated by the Amish religious community. 11 young girls are shot. 5 of them are killed. In 2007, campus chaos. This Virginia Tech student goes on a rampage, shooting and killing 32 people.
What really saddens me is that they were all so young and, you know, ending your life in the middle. Some of them were just about to graduate. Some were just freshmen. They hadn't even seen life.
This history of violence goes as far back as the 1900s. The year is 1927, and a disgruntled resident in Bath, Michigan, near Lansing, sets off explosions inside the small town's elementary school. 45 people are killed. 38 of them were children. And back to the shootings, when a lot of these shootings happened, it prompted a lot of school districts across the country to change the way they approach school safety. I imagine it's a conversation we'll be hearing a lot of in the coming days.
Local 4 and click on Detroit, digging deeper on breaking news.
On the broadcast tonight from Newtown, Connecticut, the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary, an unthinkable attack on young children. The death toll here is 28. 20 of the dead are children. 7 adults have been murdered, and this entire town is numb.
There were parents everywhere, obviously, just trying to get to their children and make sure they're okay.
Tonight we have the latest on the investigation into the young man who did this, including some of the false reports earlier today that turned out not to be true. Also, imagine the families. Imagine this community this close to Christmas, bearing up against this devastating loss. And tonight, the entire nation is grieving for them, led by the president.
Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old.
We're still learning tonight about one of the worst school shootings in American history. Nightly news from Newtown, Connecticut begins now.
Ian Williams, reporting tonight from Newtown, Connecticut.
Well, good evening on this Friday night. It is a small school in a small town in Connecticut, which is tonight a focus of so much of this country, and for that matter, so much of the world. Good evening from Newtown, Connecticut, the subdivision of Sandy Hook, which just might be the saddest place on earth tonight. For some reason this morning, a young man wearing black, armed with at least 2 weapons, walked into a small school, 600 students, K through 4th grade, and killed 20 small children and several adults. We all have questions, the whole nation does. This nation has been plunged into sadness, led in the grieving and the mourning earlier today by the President of the United States. And of course, this community has been crushed, absolutely silenced. There's no changing the fact that we're this close to Christmas. We're standing here in front of the volunteer firehouse, already decorated in Christmas lights. This is where the families were told to come tonight. It's the nerve center for all the investigators, the FBI. And just to give you some perspective as to where we are, we're in northern Fairfield County, Connecticut, kind of the northern edge of the New York City area. There are some commuter towns dotted through this region. Fairfield County runs from the water in the south on up into the country, but for all intents and purposes, Newtown, Connecticut is any town USA. It is a thriving, middle-class, lovely New England community that will now, of course, never be the same. Correspondent Ann Thompson was among the first reporters arriving for us here today. Ann, you've been here all day. It's hard to describe.
It really is. It's indescribably tragic, Brian. And I think Connecticut Governor Dan Malloy said it best earlier today when he said that evil visited this community. And when evil came, police responded with everything they had, including tactical teams and canine units. There were sharpshooters here. The state police and the FBI all came to help, but there was little they could do to stop the young man who did the unthinkable.
Kindergartners to 4th graders went to Sandy Hook Elementary School today to learn and play. 20 would die. Police say the first call for help came just after 9:30 a.m.
I was in the gym and I heard I heard like 7 loud booms, and the gym teachers told us to go in the corner. So we all huddled, and I kept hearing these booming noises, and we all started, we didn't scream, we started crying. So all the gym teachers told us to go into the office where no one could find us. Miss Martin just closed the door and we went to the corner.
How many shots did you hear?
Lots.
Police rushed to the school and entered immediately.
They did search every nook and cranny, every room, and every portion of that school.
At 9:40, a reverse 911 call went out to parents.
Due to reports of a shooting, as yet unconfirmed, the district is taking preventative measures by putting all schools in lockdown until we ensure safety of all students and staff. Thank you.
This young man ran to find his sister, a student at Sandy Hook.
I saw 3 injured children, all 3 of them female, and one of them was very bloody, had a very bloody face, and then 2 other ones were carried out by a state trooper.
Inside the school, police found the shooter dead. Police say they never fired a shot. Many of the shooter's victims, the youngest children in the school.
The shootings did take place in one section of the school in 2 rooms.
Along with the children, 6 adults were also killed. Frantic parents swarmed the firehouse where the uninjured children were taken.
You don't know the condition of your child, and you can't do anything to immediately help them or protect them. It is a powerless and terrifying experience.
Richard Wilford's son was not hurt. Nearby Danbury Hospital prepared for the worst.
We activated 4 separate trauma teams. We had 80 people waiting in the emergency room. They were mobilized within 10 minutes.
Only 3 people were taken to the hospital. In this neighborhood in Newtown, police say another person was found dead at a second crime scene.
Now, this event has shaken everyone, especially the men and women who responded to this tragedy. And tonight there are counselors for the first responders. And also the state police, they have assigned a trooper to every family who lost someone today. Brian?
Ordinary medical reports that didn't prove to be correct. There are some things we still don't know tonight about what transpired in the small school in this town. But there's a lot we do know. And our justice correspondent, Pete Williams, has been leading our reporting on this story all day. He is with us tonight. And Pete, tell us what we do know this evening. Well, you're right, Brian. It has been a day of confusion about exactly who was involved and exactly what happened. But tonight, the details are becoming clearer, though the central question, why, remains unanswered. Investigators say the man who committed one of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history was just 20 years old, the son of a kindergarten teacher at the school he attacked. They identify him tonight as Adam Lanza, and they say when he entered the school, he was dressed all in black, carrying 2 handguns and hundreds of rounds of ammunition.
Minutes after our officers were there, they realized, what a horrific scene we had there.
Adding to the confusion, law enforcement officials say the gunman was carrying his brother's identification. When police tracked the brother down in Hoboken, New Jersey, about 80 miles away, they learned the gunman was actually Adam Lanza, said by his brother to have mental health issues. Back in Newtown, police discovered another shooting victim, a woman, officials say, at the house where Adam Lanza was living.
The perpetrator of the crime is dead, as is an individual who the perpetrator lived with.
Tonight, authorities say they believe the victim at the house was Adam Lanza's mother and that she was shot at home, not at the school, though that is still under investigation. A former FBI profiler says that's a disturbing and revealing fact.
The children were loved by his mother. The children were part of her, and she was part of them. By going and symbolically killing the children, he was also killing another part of his mother.
Tonight, police are working to trace when and how Adam Lanza obtained the guns, and they're looking for anything in his background or recent communications that would shed light on what led him to plan and carry out this mass shooting. And tonight, law enforcement officials say those guns that were used in today's shooting were all registered to Adam Lanza's mother and had been legally purchased. Officials say he carried 4 guns to the scene in all, using at least 2 of them and leaving the other 2, they believe, in the car. Brian? First, informed of this mid-morning by his national security advisor. Then, of course, the cable news coverage went wall to wall all day long as more and more details came in, and the scope of this became evident to all Americans. The president entered the briefing room. We're now told he actually had longer remarks to deliver, but as you'll see, emotionally, he didn't think he could get through any more than he was able to say.
We've endured too many of these tragedies in the past few years. And each time I learn the news, I react not as a president, but as anybody else would, as a parent. And that was especially true today. I know there's not a parent in America who doesn't feel the same overwhelming grief that I do. The majority of those who died today were children. Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. They had their entire lives ahead of them. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, kids of their own. Among the fallen were also teachers, men and women who devoted their lives to helping our children fulfill their dreams. So our hearts are broken today for the parents and grandparents, sisters and brothers of these little children, and for the families of the adults who were lost. Our hearts are broken for the parents of the survivors as well. For as blessed as they are to have their children home tonight, they know that their children's innocence has been torn away from them too early, and there are no words that will ease their pain. As a country, we have been through this too many times. Whether it's an elementary school in Newton, or a shopping mall in Oregon, or a temple in Wisconsin, or a movie theater in Aurora, or a street corner in Chicago, these neighborhoods are our neighborhoods, and these children are our children.